Hi, everybody. Welcome to Discover College Soccer. Today, I'm lucky enough to be joined by Coach Shabazz at Washington and Lee. Welcome, Coach.
Thank you. Thank you, my friend. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for being here. Y you, there's not many people who've had a better first go round at a school. I mean, you started in June and then you make it to the Final Four, huh? I mean, that's a pretty good way to start your career at Washington and Lee, yeah?
You know what? It was, and I'm grateful for all of it, but quite honestly, that was my intention from the beginning. You know, I always say if you ask me to fix something in the house that's broken, probably not your guy. You ask me to, fix something with the car, I'm probably not your guy, but I've been in soccer and football all my life. So I like to think that I've learned a lot of great lessons along the way. I've gained some measure of expertise, and I felt confident in my ability and more importantly in the character of the young people that we have on this campus. So
Yeah.
uh, that said, I was still grateful. Yeah.
Well, and Washington Lee is one of those, I think, kind of coveted high academic Division III programs with a good history in men's soccer. I mean, obviously one of your only few losses was to Catholic University this year. I mean, that just goes without saying as a Catholic University alum, but um, you know, in terms of recruiting, and now you're kind of in your first full season of recruiting, right? So
Uh-huh.
what uh, where does that stand for you in terms of your timeline? Are you all done with your 25s and only looking at 26s? Are you still wrapping up a few more? Kind of what is that timeline for you at
No,
WNL?
25s are done. 25s are pretty much done by the time I came in the door, right? You got to think that for school like ours, high academic institutions with top flight programs. I mean, many of their programs, you almost I want to say almost it resembles the Division 1 schedule in that sense. In that when I came in, maybe we had 8 spots and maybe six of those were already in, right? So it's really looking at a last two then and making certain decisions about which of those student athletes fit our profile. So we've been done with 25 for a long time. We're looking at 26s and even beginning to chart some 27s because by the time uh, you say September, November. I mean, we should have some offers out there and kids having verbally committed to the program. And I imagine it's the same at other institutions like ours, right? So whether it's the Amherst, the Tufts, the Catholics, and all of these other institutions, the U Chicago's and the Emory's of the world. Uh, we get out there, we compete for the best student athletes that we could find. But many of those kids are very motivated to find a home too very quickly. And so we just typically won't have a lot of time to entertain. I mean, like I say, after September, there we pretty much be looking at 27s exclusively.
Yeah. So when you're looking at kids, is it uh, are you just looking MLS next and ECNL, or how much inbound are you answering and taking care of that way? And then what tournaments do you like to see? Where do you like to go to see players?
Well, it's certainly the best players play at MLS and ECNL tournaments, right, and events. So the vast majority of those events we will attend. But certainly, I've been in soccer long enough here in this country to know that there's value in a lot of places. I've seen a lot of players who didn't play in those particular leagues, right, for one reason or the other. And so we try to cast as wide a net as possible in terms of finding players. So we rely on networking contacts, coaches that we're well familiar with, who we know have a reputation for producing top flight players. We look at some institutions that traditionally have and institutions that generally sit outside of the MLS and ECNL kind of network. But we know traditionally those programs prepare students to make the kind of jump that's required here. Uh, International contacts, so to speak. And then, yeah, I mean, you hit it on the head. I mean, it's probably on a daily basis. Maybe it's at least 30 emails that I would get uh, from a student athlete or their parents or somebody affiliated with them, kind of trying to bring them to our attention. We typically would click on everyone, but it's just a cursory. kind of a click. If we look at the quality right off the bat, we could be able to tell, okay, yeah, this kid is something we want to explore, or something that no, we can't really entertain, right? And it's impossible to answer all of those because it just keeps it builds and builds, man. So we have to move very quickly. But there's a lot of true and tested places for where we know some of the best student athletes kind of congregate and where they're coming from. So we tend to focus our attention more on those places, but at the same time, we want to keep our view very expensive so that we could find somebody who traditionally will kind of fall out of that net.
So what about ID camps? Do you guys have your own, or do you and your staff work other ones, and
And we
how
do.
important are
No,
they?
so
Yeah.
our ID camps is very important for us because it's an opportunity for us to get students on campus, right? And it's an opportunity. I always tell them, the students, that at least the recruits that we target, is like it's better for them to come to campus and have a prolonged exposure to us, our coaching philosophy, our ideas, the feel for the campus, all of this, than for us to come to you in a one-off game where maybe you don't play too well during that day, right? Or maybe we go see you and you're playing out of position, or maybe you're not playing at all, for any number of those factors. So we get you on campus. That's really a way, and I want to say the vast majority of players that's on our roster now have come through camp. Like at some point, they've been here at camp. Some of them twice, some of them three times, right? And I think that's really valuable. I know camps probably have a reputation of being just revenue earners, but for us here at WNL, our camps are traditionally smaller, so we're not really looking at those as revenue generators, but it's really to identify student athletes that can play for us.
So whether it's at an event or an ID camp, kind of what makes up that hierarchy of things you're looking for in a player, both on the field and off?
Well, there's a saying that we have. We say character is the engine that drives everything, right? And so the question is, how do you view character, right? So you look for things that you just necessarily can't see on a highlight reel, right? The off-ball work to me is an indicator of character, right? The willingness to sacrifice for teammates and the greater cause of your team points to character. How you deal with your teammates, when adversity strikes on the field, that's character. I mean, there's been several cases where we've gone out to see players that we know are really immensely talented. We've gone to see them in the second you watch them in the game, you see them berating their teammates, berating the officials. You're like, yeah, fantastic talent, but we'd never recruit them, right? Fantastic talent, recruit them. So character for us is the key because at, at a certain point, when you come here, there's a level of independence that you gain, and we need to know that you've been able to manage this type of independence. You're responsible in terms of your study. You're responsible in terms of how you conduct yourself in a larger community and across campus, and that you're competitive as an athlete. That you're striving. You have this work ethic. There's an integrity to your game. There's a respect to your game. We want to see all of those types of elements. So the character is the first piece, right? I think the easier portions to see is whether somebody can play or not, right? Because I think even the any coach could step by a field and say, okay, yeah, this kid is really good in this position. He has these particular technical skills. His IQ, his understanding of the game is spot on. I think that's the easy thing to identify. But whether or not they fit from a character standpoint, that makes a massive difference, certainly to us.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the school. I mean, there may be
Mm-hmm.
some folks not familiar with WNL. So you've been there about 9 months now.
Yeah.
Something drew you to this program. So what have you found is great about the school? Maybe some things we wouldn't even know by going through the website.
Well, you know what? I always say, for me as a coach, I've had opportunities to coach at Division 1 levels and other schools, but I've typically turned down some of those maybe because it didn't even fit my own personal aspirations. I was raised in a household where education was foremost. I mean, foremost. If I could put that in caps, I would definitely put it in caps. I mean, my people did not play in regards to education because education was seen as that vehicle, right? That could move you from one spot in life and raise you to the next level in life. And that was something that was directly in your control, right? You didn't need any external factors. You didn't. This is something that you control. So the value of the education that you could receive here in this environment, that was a huge draw for me. Because I also know that in this kind of environment, you find I'm a very curious person by nature. I believe I'm an intellectual by in some regard. And so when I wanted to be surrounded by people who had those same types of aspirations, intellectually and otherwise, right? There's a curiosity that you find here when you engage the students on campus, and I've had an occasion to do that quite often. And I'm quite amazed a lot of times when I get a chance to speak to them and like, wow, you're doing this and you're doing this, and it's just a curiosity to it. So I really enjoy that. That feeds me, right? So just the draw to the institution from that standpoint was huge. Then when you talk about the physical beauty of the campus, I mean, we're situated here in the Blue Ridge Mountains, Shenandoah Valley, and it's the most rural aspect of the state, but it's the greenest side of the state, and just the natural beauty, the topography, the mountains, the lakes, the rivers, the stream is something that I feel a close affinity to, right? Because I often recharge by walks through nature and just kind of hanging by a river and doing those kind of things. Just kind of I was raised that way, and so getting a chance to be in that environment is just it lifts me. And so you'll find that many of our students, whether they're athletes or not, when they come and they see campus, they just see the natural beauty of it, and they're drawn to it from that aspect. And then certainly when you combine that with uh, the academics that we provide, you combine that with the world-class faculty and scholarship that they're able to gain here, and then the networking opportunities that come about because of the alumni and other related networks, that's a no-brainer.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, let's uh, either you can either rewind or fast forward. I'll let you
Mhm.
pick. But to the heart of that conference season, walk me through what does a typical week for a player look like in terms of when his practices, meals, games,
Yeah.
classes, all the things.
Yeah. Well, so typically that'll depend on where we are in the cycle, right? So certainly in preseason, there'd be a bit more demands on the players, certainly because there's no school involved. But if school is involved, we try to periodize a week in such a way, especially in the early part of the season where you might only have games to the end of the week rather than midweek games. We try to periodize it in a way where perhaps your Monday is an acclimation day where we come in and it's like just restarting the muscle, regenerating ideas. So it would be too much of a tactical or physical demand on the players, be more skill development focused, driven. Tuesday would begin to be more of a day where a heavy load is placed on the players in terms of the physical demands, but all of that's done within the construct of small sided games, medium sided games, larger sided games with some real tactical objectives that we attach to it. Wednesday would cycle down off of that hard day to allow the body to recover. But even then, especially in the early part of the season, there would be some tactical elements attached to that, though we wouldn't be driving the players as hard because they expended a lot of energy on the Tuesday. Thursday, we'd really begin to get uh, opponent specific in terms of some of the things. So we look at some of the larger concepts of what they're attempting to do and begin to address those points. Then Friday, we get into some of the minutiae, then the details of what we want to achieve in three phases in transitional phase, defensive phase, and attacking phase, along with some set piece organization and management. And then Saturday, we get ready to play. So that's what that week would look like, right? Uh, so we try to manage the loads on the players so that you feel fresh. You feel freshest by Saturday. Your body, you should be well loaded, body ready, prime, energized to go. During the typical course of the day for the players, though, uh, again, it depends on where we are in the season. I typically train once a day, but the session then we focus on quality rather than quantity. So it's about making sure we have a quality session, hour and a half, sometimes 2 hours, exactly what we need. And then we'll cycle them out, make sure that rest is involved in the preseason aspect. Because I know when I was a playing college a long time ago, it's the idea was the Beer Bryant school of thing, right? Well, can we run you till you throw up and fall down, and you just that's it's kind of outdated. It doesn't make sense scientifically. So we make sure that the players have a rest portion, so they train hard, go for meals, rest portion in the day where we really ask them to just get off their legs, rest, chill out. And then later on, we'll come back and we'll do some tactical meetings, maybe some chalk talk, maybe some film review, things of that nature. And then we do a lot of leadership work as well, where we charge leaders in the team with different aspects that we want them to work on, and they got to present to the group and things like that. So we try to put a lot or the responsibility for the team, the welfare of the team on their shoulders, and quite honestly, they cope well with it.
Okay, great. Well, let's talk a little bit more about the team. Is there a roster size that you find is ideal that you like to have?
And I think about 30 would be reasonable, quite honestly. I think you start going beyond that, it's difficult to manage just the expectations of the players because most coaches I would know would generally play probably, and somebody that's really ambitious, maybe play probably 20 guys. Some closer to myself probably have a shorter rotation there, probably somewhere between 14 and 15 players. So you're asking 15 guys to continue to train every day, give everything they have, and never have a chance of playing, right? If you go beyond 30. I think 30 allows us to have about 26 field players and about four goalkeepers, which pretty much is close to two per position. And then you have four players, multifunctional, multi-positional that could kind of plug holes wherever those holes kind of appear. So 26 in a training session, it's manageable. Could train them all at once with yourself and your assistant coaches, goalkeeper coaches working with the goalkeepers and things of that nature. And I think at any point in the season, those players feel that they would be needed. And so the motivation to stay locked in, the motivation to stay working hard, it remains very high rather than, the 34th or 35th man, that you would never play.
Right.
So about 30 is I think is ideal.
Okay.
28 to 30 would be perfect.
Wait, when you mentioned coaching staff, so besides the roster of players, you got your roster of staff. Talk to me about who else helps out with the team. What roles does everybody play? Maybe what other support staff are in the athletic department that help out with the team as well?
Yeah, well, we have a SID staff first of all, so they'll take charge of much of the promotion and marketing of the program in some sense, right? And I think you'll see a lot of collegiate programs are beginning to bring in social media interns and things of that nature because to older guys like myself, it could be a foreign language, right? Though I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better, but still, it takes a lot of time, and what might take me 2 hours to do, it takes my daughter who's 19 years 5 minutes to get done, if that, right? So certainly it's a language I think that young people speak. So we're working on bringing that type of individual into the fold. Then obviously I have a close assistant coach, who's a full-time assistant coach who works with me not only in the recruiting realm but certainly on the field as well. Because with 26 players training, you as a coach, you can't see all of it, right? Yeah, so you need additional eyes to take a look at what's going on in the pitch in different segments, maybe to pay a bit more attention to some individuals. And then we have two volunteer coaches as well. One you're dedicated to working with the goalkeepers, so they have their needs met, and then just a third a coach who's also just eyes and ears on the field, right? And you try to make sure that they have different profiles, or at least they fit different profiles. Some probably a bit more relatable to the players, so the players feel that there's a bridge between them and the coaching staff generally. Uh, Others who like, for instance, we have Gordon Meeker, who's on our staff. Gordon played here; he's an alum here, right? And so much of what our players would go through, Gordon has been through, and so he could help navigate them through some of those challenges, and then introduce them to a networking world of alums from his generation that could really connect them to opportunities that could extend way beyond our campus, right? So everybody has a function in that sense, a very real one. And I think the players really benefit from it.
Okay. Well, what about you? Talk to us about your coaching style and the style of play you like to play there.
Well, I grew up where, you know what, where if I think about it, I grew up as a kid watching my uncles play, and I had about five uncles who were very, very good players. But soccer or football, as we'll call it, was looked at in such a way that it was not only a sport, was entertainment, right? So the local team that they played on, if it was a team that won games 1-0 and won a championship, most people kind of clap politely. It was a team that came second, but most of the games were 3-2 or 4-3 games with a lot of attacking, a lot of skill, and a lot of things. People walk away. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So obviously, we want to be able to combine a flair for playing, make the football a very attractive style of game, one that accentuates building through the thirds, fast-paced attacking, individual creativity, rapid transitions, all of these type of things that you'll see, I guess, in a modern kind of a game, if you, especially if you think about the EPL or something like that. So you want to have those trappings. I mean, we're a bit different from, I think, most of our opponents who tend to be a bit more direct in their play. I believe in keeping the ball because I think you can make a team tired by keeping the ball, making them have to chase the game quite a bit. And so that was the emphasis that we place in terms of development. I think the teams here in the past have played more in transition and very successful at it, right? So I'm not saying that there's only one way to be successful at it. I just think from my perspective, my philosophy, my vision is to keep more of the ball and to allow players to be a bit more creative and give a little more freedom in terms of that because that's how I enjoy playing.
Hmm.
And so I think we did that this year to some great success. I mean, in the early parts of the year, I think we were still in transition from because all of the players, for the most part, had played under a different style, and so it was getting them used to my ideas. And it's one thing to do that on the training ground, but I think it's another thing to do that in when you're playing against somebody who's getting after you. And so it took 2 or 3 games for us to really begin to get those ideas to see that actualized. But once I thought we got that actualized, uh, I think you see for yourself that it kind of took off and it worked quite well for us. So the idea would be to keep building on that.
Okay. Well, we're in the spring. Kind of give me an idea. What does your non-traditional spring season look like in terms of practices and games and stuff like that?
Well, again, because everything is aligned to philosophy. It's not you can't do it in just this vacuum. It has to be aligned to specifically to what we're working on. So early part of so one of the things we know for sure is that we wanted to increase is the physical strength and capacities of the team. So working with a dedicated strength and training staff, players had to get in there 2 to 3 times a week to begin to build their physical base, right? Aerobically, anaerobically, develop explosion, increase flexibility, increase range of motion, right? Because all of these things, not only it makes you stronger, perform better in football, but it also helps to reduce injuries, makes you more durable, right? And one of my biggest, I always tell the players is people always ask who you're recruiting, right? And I say that that's not really the question to ask. The question is, can we get the current players on the roster to develop at least 25% more at minimum in terms of their capabilities? Because if you could get that to happen, then whatever is coming in the door, then at any point is just a cherry on top of a really good cake, right? So we wanted to improve the physical capacity of the group, and then we also wanted to help players to become more comfortable with the individual creativity, the mastery of the ball, technical skills, and so we worked a lot on futsal in the early part of a non-traditional, right? So we had 24 sessions, about 8 of those were just reserved strictly for futsal. So small-sided games, quick decision making, rapid skill execution, things of that nature. And then once the weather turned nice, as it is here in Lexington today, we segment to outside, but continuing with the same team of individual development. The focus is not much on team tactical concepts because you've got guys that are on internships, guys that are on study abroad, guys that are not in the door yet. That's going to be fundamental to how you play. So the key is, can I just improve the 11 that I have and make that 11 better than your 11? And then we can bring those tactical concepts together. So it's really about working on 2 to 3 times a week in training sessions, 90 minutes, just really accentuating functional skills in the way that you would need to apply them on the field. So center backs working a lot with short game, receiving, building out of pressure, playing diagonal balls, hitting different targets, left foot, right foot, so they just get comfortable with that idea. And that's just one example, but we try to place these players in all of those scenarios to make it a little more challenging. But certainly when we ask them to do something, a game is something that they've done 100 times before. So it shouldn't feel like, it shouldn't, it should come off rather than look like something that, yeah, that, that they haven't done.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
Coach, I really appreciate the time. I'm going to leave you with one last question, and that is if you had one piece of advice for any guy going through this college recruiting process right now, what would that be?
You know what? I think the greatest thing, and it might seem kind of crazy, but I say the greatest thing is to know yourself, right? Because in knowing yourself, it's written above the temples in Egypt, the temples in Greece, they say, man, know thyself, right? And they said that for a reason, because once you understand yourself, then you know exactly what works or doesn't work for you. I think I see a lot of young players, especially guys. I think the young ladies are far more mature in terms of their capabilities and understanding. But every young man that I encounter, whether he can chew gum and walk in a straight line, is like, oh, I'm going pro, I'm going D1. I'm like, man, well, do you understand what that environment looks like? Do you understand what your capabilities are? Do you understand what's fit for you academically, what fits for you psychologically, where you'd feel most comfortable? And a lot of them just, they've never thought about that. They all know it's like, listen, D1, and I'm going there. So I think the better you understand yourself, the better you understand what do you want to study, where do you want to study, what classroom sizes look good for you. And that's not even entertaining soccer just yet, right? Just talking about that from just an academic standpoint. And then certainly if you took soccer into consideration, it's not just a school liking you, it's whether or not you fit within the reality of their school, right? Because I always, like every time we recruit a player, one of the things we do, especially when one that we really want, we don't discuss a general plan with them. We are very specific about how we see their progression in the team from year one to year four and what that chart of development looks like. So how we're going to train them, uh, where we're potentially going to play them, what their challenges are going to be. We try to anticipate all of those things and help them to really understand that. I think maybe a last one that players never really consider is just the coaching style. When I was a youngster, I could pretty much deal with any type of coaches because traditionally my coaches were very good, but they screamed a lot. And I was just really good at just tuning some of it out or just not being bothered personally by what they said. I think some players are quite different. You scream at them, they go internally, and the game disappears. Well, do you want to be in that environment, or you want to be with a coach who's more of an educator, a teacher who put his arms around his shoulder, still hold you accountable, but relate to you differently? I think all of those things are really important in the grand scheme of recruiting, and I think those things are not necessarily the things that are paid attention to. But I think if you as an individual understood precisely who you are and what your expectations are and what your capabilities are and where those things fit, then I think the college choices become really easy. Yeah. So it's rather about it's less than about what school wants me, but what school I want. And that makes a massive difference.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Couldn't agree more. Well, Coach, I really appreciate the time and the insights, and
My
congrats
pleasure.
again on a fantastic first season. Wish you best of luck finishing out the spring, and hopefully you'll get back to that Final Four.
No, the aim is to try to win it all, my friend. So we'll keep working at
All right,
it.
thanks, Coach. Take care.
My pleasure. Have a good one.